This is a little intro we recorded at the last minute after we wrapped up this 30-minute discussion of these issues. Because it really seemed to both of us that there was an important question underlying a lot of what we said, but we never really made it explicit enough. And the question is this: are you hurting people, or are you helping them through flattery? And maybe one of the most fundamental misconceptions in our culture is that flattery is helpful rather than harmful. So we spent a lot of time on airplanes, and we watched a movie together on the airplane a couple months ago. And otherwise we wouldn't have watched this movie. It's a film called The Disaster Artist, and it's a film about a film. It relates to an earlier film that was called The Room. You guys don't need to know the background story, but one of the crucial elements is that there is a mentally disabled guy who is struggling to become an actor in Hollywood. And a lot of people were saying to him, "You'll never make it. You can never do this. This isn't for you." Now, he also wasn't conventionally good looking. I mean, peculiar. As everyone says in the film, everyone told him he could play a vampire or he could play a monster, but he couldn't be a kind of handsome lead, which is what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a romantic leading man. And his mental disability was caused by a car accident, caused by brain damage from impact or injury. So it wasn't that he was born mentally disabled. So the film is interesting in many other ways. We're not going to talk about that here. But what Melissa asked me, I think you asked as we were getting off the plane, you said, I want to know your honest opinion on this, but is it really a good thing for everyone else in this man's life to be enabling him? If you have a mentally disabled person, is it really good? Is it helpful or harmful for all these other people to be telling them, you're good enough, you're smart enough, you can do it, And it's already built into the question that really the answer is no. So it seems like virtue. It seems kind and it seems helpful to tell someone, even if it's something simple, someone who's bad at math, telling them, "Oh no, honey, you're good at math in your own way. You can do this." Well, if you keep encouraging them and flattering them, and then they actually spend $50,000 going to college trying to get a degree in math or trying to get a degree in theoretical physics, and they're not really good at math, are you helping them or harming them? Obviously, this is something harmful, even if it's presented as flattery. Something else is, in the fullness of this video, it's a 30-minute video, Melissa talks about the fact that she really grew up with people telling her that she was mature for her age. And, maybe this helped build up her self-confidence, but in some ways, as we discuss here, it was really a false self-confidence. And she had a kind of crushing realization at a certain point that she really wasn't mature for her age. This was just something people had flattered her about over and over again. So in this video, we talk about ugliness. We talk about real ugliness, like being born, seriously, hideously deformed, where ugliness is a real factor in daily life. We talk about the relative gradations of publicly perceived beauty and plainness and ugliness. We talk about, the whole range here. But I think one thing we didn't say explicitly enough really comes down to the morality of the lie, the morality of deception, and encouraging others in their self-deception through flattery. I do not see it as morally positive to tell someone you can be a runway model, you can be a fashion model, you can be a beauty icon, when really they can't, when really that's not the type of beauty they have. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the example we're about to go into, I would not even tell everyone you have what it takes to learn Chinese. I know better than most. Some people have what it takes and some people don't. I would not tell everyone you have what it takes to learn Cambodian or you have what it takes to learn Pali. I wouldn't even tell everyone you have what it takes to study Shakespeare, with English being your first. I don't. I think there's something really meaningful about being honest in telling people this is what it takes. Have you got what it takes? Whether it's tangible physical beauty or strength or athleticism or self-discipline, whether it's any of these characteristics. But yeah, for the next 30 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you take something meaningful from what for us was a meaningful discussion about physical beauty, ugliness, and ultimately about the lies we tell ourselves, the lies we tell others. It's hard to be honest about the advantages and disadvantages we're born with in life. Now, I was with my girlfriend for about a year and a half before I said to her, I think you're actually talented at learning Chinese. I think you actually have a combination of characteristics, part of which just has to do with memorization, accuracy in speaking, kind of diligence in written note-taking, a bunch of things that I'd seen over a year and a half. And I said, look, I've sat next to and worked with a whole bunch of different white people while they were learning Chinese, some Hispanics and some black people, but there's no point, saying anything else here. And I do really think you have a lot of advantages over other Westerners when they started learning Chinese, when they went through this process. I think this is something you can be not just mediocre at or scrape by at, but be great at, right? Now, by the same token, there must be other people I would say the opposite to, right? It must be. There's no way. This is the problem. The response Nina and Randa made to my criticism was, how dare you call any person ugly? Right. Everyone is beautiful. And to say any one person, not that they're ugly fundamentally, but that they are too ugly to be a model. They're too ugly to be paid to be beautiful in an advertisement for soap or fashion. Like, that's what we're talking about here. If it's an advertisement for a candy bar, whatever. Sometimes there are plain or even ugly people in advertising. It happens. It doesn't make sense intellectually, physically, or otherwise. And I think a lot of us, within our own families or within our own circle of friends, whether you do it gently or harshly, there's a process of trying to say, look, you're never going to be, you're never going to be an actor. This is not the path for you. Or look, even with music, right? People, and they're okay as a musician. Their ability to play the guitar, their ability to sing is okay. But you can spin it one of two ways. You can say, look, either you're never going to make it, you don't have what it takes. But you might also say, look, if you do make it, it's just luck, because you don't have what it takes. If you're fundamentally too ugly to be a model, but you're born rich and your parents have connections and you keep going to auditions in LA. Born in LA. Right. And sooner or later you manage to get a little bit of work. Well, okay. But the point would still stand where you don't really have this talent. You don't really have what it takes. Yeah. So look, okay, we can talk primarily or entirely about the physical side of it. My girlfriend was just saying, look, I think there really is a difference between biologically real ugliness and the fashions and trends that come and go in our society or our culture. Yeah. I saw a debate on British television. So, England, Scotland, and Wales, they have a somewhat different healthcare system from Canada, the United States. And there was a surgeon there who was advocating for, in blunt language, people who were ugly beyond a certain threshold should be able to get plastic surgery for free on their faces. Wow. And I remember during the interview, they put up a photograph of one of his clients, and he said, "Well, look, how can you justify this? Like, this person got a nose job, but their original nose is not that bad. It's not like they have two noses." And I remember the plastic surgeon said back, "Some people have two noses." Like, he was kind of dead serious on that. And I think that's really true. There are some people who are born really deformed or with real medical conditions, real problems. And if that's your child, or if that's your brother, or if that's your friend in school, being honest with them about what this life means and how to get ahead and what have you, that's one thing. Now, okay, so there are many, many steps and stages removed from that. There are people who grow up or as fully grown adults feel, I'm not beautiful in the same way as these people on magazine covers. I'm not as beautiful as what's currently celebrated in hip-hop videos, if what you listen to is hip-hop, or whatever is going on in country music, or whatever genre or something. But look, so what's your approach to that? It's something we all got to live with in various ways. Yeah.
So I will say an anecdote. I will tell an anecdote. I just recently took a certification course to get certified to teach English as a second language.
Right.
And in this, there was an exercise. She was giving, the teacher who was doing the program, she was giving an example of what you might share in class as a listening exercise. And it was listening to the song You're Beautiful by James Blunt.
Right.
And in preparation for this, before she even played the song, she asked the question to the class, like, okay, so split up into groups and talk amongst yourselves. What does it mean to be beautiful? What does beauty mean to you? And once we gathered as a whole class and shared our answers, it became clear to me that I think people are really uncomfortable talking about beauty in a physical sense or just matters of skin deep. A lot of people were trying to focus on inner beauty.
Yeah.
And I really was wondering, because I had a friend who was originally from China, so she's from Shanghai, and I know just discussions about beauty, they're more blunt over there.
Yep.
In China. They really focus on physical beauty, and they're honest with you if you're not beautiful, or like, you've said you've had professors who will say, oh, I can tell you've gained weight since the last time I saw you, or something. They're very and it's not necessarily being rude, and it's not necessarily just to make the other person feel bad. So anyway, I was wondering what she was going to say, but I think she's had so much experience with Western culture that she was able to say, like, oh, well, we just focused on inner beauty. We talked about being a nice person, being a kind, giving, loving person, rather than talking about physical beauty. And I thought it was funny. I was the only person in class, like the person that I was talking with kind of laughed at me. Like she just burst out laughing because the first thing I said when we split up into groups was, not being deformed.
Right.
She just cracked up. And I think like part of humor is what is not okay to say in everyday life. Right. And like, I wonder when that happened, because, I grew up in a very
You're saying something that's obvious but everywhere concealed.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's so true. But yeah, I grew up in a politically correct culture, and I think I was at the start of this oppression Olympics that is going on. And I know political pundits, they say that millennials are so hypersensitive that they can't take criticism. And, as we walk around, I've seen spray painted signs like everyone is beautiful, or like you are beautiful. Right. And it's become so meaningless. If everybody's beautiful, what does it mean? And this is something I think most people struggle with. Most people think about in terms of physical beauty. It's something that you're insecure about because...
Right. Well, look, so, I mean, there are several kind of false dichotomies or false distinctions here. But, I mean, one is the assumption that if we switch from talking about real beauty to inner beauty, that we're going from something judgmental to something non-judgmental, like something that's more inclusive. No? So, I mean, okay, so if we agree not everyone has outer beauty, does everyone have inner beauty? If we agree not everyone likes to be judged for their outer beauty, isn't it more hurtful? Doesn't it sting more when you're being judged on your inner beauty? Because guess what? Some people are ugly inside and out, and people... So, I mean, what's the point? We just move on to a kind of deeper form of judgment or criticism.
I don't want to, share too much dirty laundry, but I mean, like... before I have been with you, I have not had somebody, like, I really appreciate the honesty from you. And I know you've said this in other videos that, like, I really appreciate that you tell me if I'm being a bitch, basically, because, like, or if I'm not being a good partner, because it's really important to be loving and respectful and treat the other person with dignity. And it's so strange to me how the closest people in your life sometimes
they're the people who will never tell you unless
they won't tell you that you're being a bitch, like you need to
I just want to put in a quick example here. This is not an offensive example at all, but we were in a hotel in Detroit, and we were walking up the stairs past the check-in desk, And Melissa spoke to the front desk staff without thinking about it. I mean, she didn't mean it in a mean way. But I pointed out to Melissa, I said, like, if you were in England, you'd be absolutely scorned. That was really rude. That was really contemptuous and dismissive, the way you talked to the front desk guy. And I know Melissa. Like, I can interpret her intention behind her words and stuff. I can tell she didn't mean to be. But, I mean, that was really, sorry, in terms of, like, talking about, being a bitch or having it pointed out to you or something. So, I mean, that was, again, I mean, at the moment, you were kind of momentarily upset by it, but you did kind of reflect. You're like, yeah, you know what? Taking the 5 seconds to actually make eye contact with the hotel staff and say, hey, sorry, I have a question. That little bit of lead in and not just shouting across the room what you want the hotel staff to do. That's so I just say, that is the kind of thing we're talking about here. Go on.
But I just want to say, like, even inner beauty, like, even like being a loving person. I think that we are in this generation, we are quick to call somebody beautiful on the inside too, even if they're not.
Right.
Like, people might say that about, the topic of that is bringing about this conversation is Nina and Randa. Like, I think they get a lot of positive, positive feedback. And I mean, I don't need to talk about it in general, but like you and me, I've had instances where I have had beliefs about myself that have been totally thrown into question. Like when I was growing up, I was told by people around me that I was mature for my age. That I was just had some level of wisdom that was better than, because I think I was always more not more, but I was somewhat responsible for myself. Like I didn't binge drink and pass out on the floor or something. Like I took care of myself, and in this way I tended to think of myself as mature. But then, like, in the series of what has happened in our relationship, I mean, like, we've been through a lot of stuff, and it's mostly because of me. And, you told me, like, Melissa, you've told me that you're mature for your age, but you're really not. Right. And that really, like, stung.
I remember.
Stung more than hearing anything about, like, oh, you're not curvy, Because it's true, like, I can recognize it now, and I'm comfortable. Like, I mean, I'm trying to build muscle to be more fit and like healthy looking, but I wasn't born with large breasts. I wasn't born with the genetics that predisposed me for that, and it's fine. It's cool. I mean, some people like it. Some people must think Nina and Randa are attractive, and it's okay for you to voice that. It's okay for you to voice that you don't find them attractive. In the same way, it's okay to voice that you do. Right. If other people do, that's fine. That's a matter of...
Right. But, I mean, look, exactly these things, whether it's inner beauty or outer beauty, it's funny how much it changes when we move past this totally vague, abstract compliment to anything particular. So, like, if you say everyone is beautiful, not everyone has large breasts.
Right.
And this is a separate discourse, but we've had a bunch of videos we've watched and things we respond to dealing with, this is mostly because of Kal-El. Kal-El has a bunch of health problems, and they may or may not be related to her breast implants and her numerous plastic surgeries. Kal-El wanted to look like somebody biologically she could never be. She wanted to have large breasts. My impression is she wanted to look like a Playboy model. I remember her getting really upset when she made a visit to the Playboy Mansion. That's why I mentioned Playboy. I haven't seen that many of her videos, but I remember seeing a video where she visited the Playboy Mansion, how much that meant to her, that she wants to look like a Playboy bunny, and she can't, and she never will. Now obviously Kal-El has a lot of advantages over like 98% of humanity, and she was good looking enough to get by in this life. Again, coming back to that interview with the plastic surgeon, some people have two noses. I mean, some people have really deformed faces, and I think it's an interesting question. Should the taxpayer, should public health provide free corrective surgery to people with certain kinds of deformities, even when they're just aesthetic, and what kind of impact that can have on someone's life? Because I've known people, not my close friends, but I have known people with genuinely deformed faces and genuinely deformed bodies. But my point was, with Kal-El, ultimately you've got to come back to saying recreational surgery has really high risks, and it's in almost all circumstances it's wrong. And we saw some YouTube videos dealing with the horrifying health effects that again, maybe 20% of people get with breast implants. It's not that 100% of people have this reaction, but having breast implants, it's a foreign object inside your body, and your immune system reacts to it. There are all these problems, built into it. So, you want to say everyone is beautiful. Well, not everyone has large breasts. And of course, that's not the only criterion of beauty. But if you think women aren't hung up about having large breasts, what about men and large penises versus small penises? Because there are some female beauty icons who have small breasts. There are some female porn stars who have small breasts. Sorry, my point is there are some who are larger, some who are small. But even in pornography, let alone runway models for fashion or something, or actresses, at any given time there are plenty of actresses who are flat-chested or have small breasts, right? There are no male porn stars with small penises. There's no positive association with that. And of course, men do get surgery to have bigger penis,
Horrific surgeries.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, but there's no, there are many different female body types that are considered beautiful. For straight men, I think there's a little bit more, actually, with gay men, there's a little bit more diversity. But for straight men, nobody wants to be weak. Nobody wants to be small. Nobody wants to be short. And even when they become famous for other reasons, I've never heard a dude say he wants to look like Prince, the performing artist, R.I.P. Everyone wants to look like DMX. Nobody wants to look like Tekashi 6ix9ine. I just saw an interview about that. These are two different rappers, but Tekashi 6ix9ine is small and weak. He's maybe 5'7". He looks like he could never win in a fist fight. And DMX is that dude everyone's afraid to have a fist fight with. So it's very unfair. And sorry, I said this. I can't remember. This was years ago. The last time I said this on the channel. But I'm not on an ego trip. When I go to the gym, most days, not every day, I may be the weakest guy in the gym. I'm bench pressing 220 pounds or whatever I'm doing that particular day, and there are guys there lifting 400 pounds. That's, it depends on what gym you go to. It depends on what day it is at the gym. I'm not deluded. I'm not out of touch. I'm not out of touch with the reality. So that's just physical side. But coming back to this issue about, these compliments people give you, it's interesting that really impacted you. I don't think that type of flattery impacted me growing up. Kind of a different question. But it's real easy to say to somebody, you're mature for your age. And I think you kind of skipped over what the real reasons would be. You got a job. She started having normal jobs early. You got a straight job. You kind of wear normal looking clothes. You don't, you're not dressing in a teenage rebel style. You're not dressing punk rock. You're not dressing emo. You're not dressing hip hop. You're kind of dressing in a professional way. You have a job. You have an income. You're living an ostensibly and outwardly responsible life. Right. Now, beneath the surface, actually, during that period of your life, there were a lot of things wrong, but that's not what adults are saying. So, but again, it's the same thing. If we're going to talk about inner beauty, well, if some people are mature for their age, for one thing, that's got to have advantages and disadvantages. And not everybody can be mature for their age, right? So some people are immature for their age. So some people are living a lie or whatever. And what does that mean? So yeah, but I think in terms of your self-image, that was one of the biggest turning points you had in the last, let's say, 2 years to round off. Mm-hmm. I remember that the first time we talked about that really had a huge impact on you. We had several conversations about it, but you were 25 at the time. And I said, look, Melissa, I can remember what it was like to be 25. And of course at the university and even within... Okay, well, even within vegan activism, I know a lot of people 24, 25 years old, this kind of age. Yeah. And I said, I know you pride yourself in this. I know you say you're mature for your age, but you're not. I know you well now. And so on. Let's talk about what would someone be like if they were mature at 24, 25. Let's talk about, Yeah, that was kind of a real interesting turning point. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But look, so I'm in love with Melissa. I think we're building a good life and a good future together. I was going to make a separate video about this on this issue, but for me, the first whole year we were together, the main priority of my life was building this relationship. And I studied way less Chinese. I really basically stopped studying Chinese. I was still living in China, speaking Chinese every day, and I was teaching class, writing Chinese on the board and speaking Chinese to the students, so I was getting practice. But I basically stopped studying for a whole year. And now we're talking about getting serious about working on Chinese together. We're kind of semi-serious at the moment. that was a big priority for me. But I never lied to you about, or like your boyfriend you were with before me. I think he told you all the time that you were basically the most beautiful woman in the world and whatever.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, but it's funny. I mean, people who grow up, whether they grow up with it just from their own family or from their boyfriends or husbands or men who are in love with them, being told that you're so beautiful and you're the apogee of beauty, as opposed to being with someone like me who's realistic with you, who says, look, I love you, and I love you for various reasons and various redeeming qualities you have. No. I mean, I remember, I mean, like, you are not the most beautiful woman I've met. You're not the most beautiful woman who's hit on me or offered to have sex with me. And
right.
sometimes living in Asia, it may not be even this month or something. There may be a lot of women trying to get at me and that I'm turning down, that I'm refusing.
Yeah.
This is the reality of my life. There were other women, both face to face in real life, hitting on me. There, at that time, when you and I first got together by email or by Facebook, there were really good looking women trying to get at me.
Yeah.
Then it stopped because but I'm just saying, what is the morally positive value of a lie? Is what that's starting to come down to.
Yeah. I just want to say I really don't like the infiltration of inner beauty with beauty
Yes,
there.
right,
because
right,
when you
right.
say that, like when I first heard things like this, or when you would talk about other women who are beautiful,
Right.
I had this real complex, like, because of that, like, because I had been with somebody who was real possessive and was like,
Yes,
you
right.
are mine, you are the most beautiful, we're perfect for that was how my prior relationship was. And you were more like honest about it. You were like, people, everybody has advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
And like,
Right.
It's not necessarily like what is sorry, yeah. I mean, I was just gonna kind of diverge into something else, but I was thinking about I was thinking about how standards of beauty have changed.
Right. That more cultural level.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Yeah. It's now not like, maybe in the past it was the most beautiful thing in the world to be white and thin and kind of look like Nina and Randa or something. But now the standards of beauty are like Kim Kardashian, like be ethnically ambiguous, like
the wilting English rose look.
Yeah.
used to be in fashion.
Yeah, but now it's totally different. And anyway, I'm just saying, when you said like somebody's more beautiful to me, I was like, oh, like, do they have like
Right,
what,
it's something
what
obvious.
is it? Like, what can I change about myself to be like the perfect girl for you? Like, what's your like?
Right.
How can I be better like for
Right.
you? Because like I really just wanted to impress you, or like and I think.
Okay, but look, this is the other thing. Okay, all right. Outer beauty, in many ways, you can't change, right?
No, right.
In many and again, Kal-El, I think, is a tragic case of this. I forget, she had more than 9 plastic surgeries. She had one on her nose, one on her chin, and then her breast. But like, there was this long list. Most of them were on her face, but the plastic surgery breast.
Because she looked cute before.
She looked good enough to get through this life, maybe.
Yeah.
But again, that's part of being realistic. She didn't have someone in her life to say that to her. Like, look, kid, you're never going to be in Playboy magazine. Or if you are, it's not going to be for good reasons. It's not going to be for these reasons. But but you're good enough to get through life. That would be realistic. But look, you can't really change your appearance. You can't change your gender. Topic where everybody there was like, can't change your ethnicity. Can't change your age. Right? I'm 40 years old. I'm not in denial about that either. There are a lot of things you can't change. But then again, the contrast to inner beauty, which is not normal how I talk about it. Well, can you? Can you change that?
Yeah.
Or to what extent, can you change it? Come up, in the actual critiques I did of Nina and Randa, I mostly talked about intellectual work, which you can change. That can change quick. You can start reading history and politics. You can change.
Decide not to be an idiot.
Right. You can start living a more meaningful life intellectually, right?
Yes.
But so I think you've changed a lot. To give an example of inner beauty, when I got with Melissa, she was unbelievably jealous. Yeah. Jealousy was like one of her main driving motive forces.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, that's changed. I mean, that's, I think it's almost completely disappeared. I mean,
Definitely.
it's 95%. That's a big change in your character.
And it's so much, like, it's so much better to not, like, be that. I don't know, like, it really is so much healthier for everybody to just
Right?
It yeah.
Yeah. No, but okay, so another change. Again, this may or may not relate to inner beauty. Melissa had never really spent any time with little kids before.
Yeah.
Melissa got with me. She immediately started being like a second mom to my daughter. And, my daughter really got emotionally attached to her very quickly. And, so she starts being a parent to my daughter. And you also started teaching students in China who were young kids and stuff. You develop this kind of mothering side. Now, again, these things, is it inner beauty or not? No, I mean, look, I mean, if one thing is inner beauty, then the other isn't. If being mothering and nurturing and down to earth is beautiful, is inner beauty, then it's not inner beauty to be a fastidious, bitchy, jealous, cold, and distant towards children kind of person, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all of these are judgments, right? And, it's funny, but I mean, the inner beauty thing, in some ways, it's even more inflexible than outer beauty,
right.
So,
it's true.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I really cherish all the times that I've had with your daughter, and I really found a lot of value in teaching children and actually having that experience. I think it really did change my perspective on life, what's important in life, and
you can see those issues already with kids. I mean, if you're teaching 10-year-old kids or something, you can see some of them are beautiful, and some of them are really born with big disadvantages that way in terms of physical development or their facial structure. You can see some of them are going to their whole lives have a different cross to bear. I don't think we can make that easier or better by being dishonest about it. So this is actually covered in Aristotle, by the way. Aristotle's Politics. Never got back to doing it. But it is interesting that Aristotle talks about the fact that being handsome or being beautiful is this huge advantage in life, but that it shouldn't be considered in apportioning your political rights and responsibilities, which is ultimately what I'm interested in here, not so much the apportioning of your YouTube success. But I remember back at the very start of my YouTube channel, when people were really influenced by very shallow lifestyle and bikini vloggers. That was the heyday of Freely and Durian Rider. I can remember saying to people, never forget, like, look at the guys who've really got, look at The Amazing Atheist, look at TJ Kirk. But like, a lot of the most successful people here on YouTube long term are really ugly. TJ Kirk pretty much identifies as ugly, pretty much self-describes as ugly, And why? Because they made their opinion matter in some other way. They're providing some kind of content or service or discussion, of politics or whatever it is, whatever the example is you want. That's not based on their appearance alone.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, there are ways in which your appearance is going to be a burden to bear your whole life and can't change. And, I mean, obviously there are limited ways in which it can change. And in terms of the inner beauty thing, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people who have personality defects. They can't change, and they may struggle with them. I mean, I don't think anyone who watches the channel really knows me that well. But, I think there are things I can own up to. I just don't want to make this video too long. It's like, look, this is a problem with me, and it's not going to change or whatever, And so, what what is the value we can place on inner beauty, and would that really make anything better if people were on Instagram judging each other for whether or not they're a good mother, whether or not they're a loving parent, or whether or not they're jealous or kind by nature? Nobody's ever given me a shred of respect because of the humanitarian work I did, and I don't ask for it. I don't expect it. But I mean, you can look at things in that context too. Well, what matters? What about my academic background, my intellectual achievements, or just caring? The fact that I care about First Nations people and their genocide enough that I actually went to the First Nations University and enrolled in those languages, and the humanitarian work I tried to do, whether it's in Canada or in Cambodia or something.
Well, that's really attractive to me.
Yeah. Oh, that is true. That is true. No, that's true. When she first was interested in me, but like nobody, including Nina and Randa, is judging me on that basis. Right? Yeah, Nina and Randa and Happy Healthy Vegan, they judge me for being old and ugly and for daring to, so, I mean, I'm just saying in terms of the judgment. Yeah, an old and ugly weirdo. So, and you can tell I'm cool with it.
Yeah, you are surprisingly cool.
Yeah.
I'm just saying because, you've been through a lot of bullying in the vegan movement. And
right, sure.
you've put up with it and you've responded in ways. You did have a video where you were weeping on screen, about the case.
Sure.
With,
Yeah. Whether or not I get to see my what
I
was weeping about. What I was weeping about was whether or not I get to see my daughter again, because how this would impact my divorce, and it did impact my divorce. Topic for another video.
I know, but it's really impacted your life being in the vegan movement. But you still, you try.
Still trying to make something positive happen.
And people still treat you like shit.
It's true.
I've listened to you start to have conversations with people.
Yes, even on the Nina and Randa issue, right?
Yeah, they start to have conversations with people, and they bring up this stuff, and they don't treat you with respect. They don't treat you with dignity. They just treat you as like a punching bag. I think because they see that you are so confident, and
I was just gonna say, oh, you moved the camera too. Of all the bullying I've dealt with, actually a really interesting contrast would be bullying within veganism versus bullying within Buddhism and even bullying within Judaism. And I just say that actually comes back to this issue that inner beauty and intangible, property security. It's actually much worse being bullied on that. There is nothing like being ethnically Jewish and having other Jews tell you that you're a bad Jew. The judgment of your soul within a religion that way. And, it would be a little bit different in different forms of Christianity or, because with Judaism, it really is about you living up to the ethnic identity. It's not about just following the Ten Commandments or something. It's really not. They have an idea of what it means to be a good Jew or to be a real Jew, to be a Jewish man. And if you're not living up to that, you're being judged. So I just say that's a little bit different than Protestantism, but some people may have experiences like that also. And within Buddhism, it was so nasty and so horrible. And their idea of what it is to be a beautiful person, they'll let you know. And if you don't live up to that, if you don't live up to their notion, they're going to tell you you're ugly on the inside. And you're going to be judged, based on this kind of awful, awful stuff, these kinds of standards you can never live up to. And my position in Buddhism, absurdly, was I was a Pali scholar, so I could read the Bible of that religion, and nobody else could. And you're surrounded by people who want to denigrate you and humiliate you and insult you because they're compensating for their own insecurity, that they worship a religion they've never really studied the Bible of. They don't really know the philosophical. They know I have a kind of power because I know the flaws. That's really nasty. And by contrast, Durian Ryder insulting me by saying that I'm on steroids, oh yes, look at what I'm able to achieve at age 40 while sitting at my desk studying books all day. Insulting me, saying that I'm steroids, saying that I'm fat and whatever. No, that's really a joke to me. That's really pretty shallow. So yeah, I think there is that kind of discourse about what it means to be a good vegan and what it means to be a good man and what it means to be a good person. Yeah. There is the shifting from the outer beauty to inner beauty discourse, but it's maybe even worse and maybe even nastier. We're past 30 minutes, so I'm gonna wrap it up there, babe. Okay, guys, if you want to talk, hit me up on Patreon.